Welcome, everyone. My name is Shanaz, and I'm welcoming you to Windows on Wellness. This is where self-care meets success. Well, more to put more of a finer point on that, I am going to be meeting with Margaret Nicholls, ADHD coach, and she's going to speak to us a little bit about how she looks after herself. So, the purpose of Windows on Wellness is very much to find out how women in business look after themselves, their own personal wellness practices, but also so that they can shine a light on the people they serve and the kinds of things that they do in their work, in their business life. And then finally, we are going to hear some top tips for thriving in life and work from Margaret. So I hope you'll enjoy this episode of my Wellness Zones Windows on Wellness, and we'd love to hear your comments in the chat below. So let me introduce my guest now. Here we have Margaret Nicholls. How are you today, Margaret?
Hi, Shanaz. Yeah, I'm very well. I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you so much. So I have a key question for you, Margaret, before we get into the world that you work in. I'd
Yeah,
like to shine a light on your own well-being. How does Margaret look after Margaret?
how I look after Margaret. Oh, now that is a really good question. I've been thinking a bit about this, and I think it's always good to like your mind always goes to think, oh, what am I not doing? But I'll try and reverse that and say what I'm doing well. So I think I eat pretty healthily. I'm vegetarian. I eat lots and lots of fruit and vegetables, and lots of fresh food. So I can give myself a pat on the back for that pat on the back for that. Protein is always a bit of a challenge, I think, when you don't eat meat. So I think sometimes I need to have a look at that.
Mm,
Um, I walk everywhere, so I think that does well. Um, but I think I could probably do some more kind of relaxation practices like breathing. I do in crisis moments
mm,
when I need to, but it's not a routine thing, and I can really see the value of that.
mm.
But it's just hard to remember unless you're actually in a moment of where you really, really need it, and that's when you remember.
Yes, yes. I
Mm,
hear you. So we're all work in progress, it has to be said. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and what suits us some days doesn't suit us on other days. But it's really heartening to hear that at least you're kind of focusing on some of the very important basic needs that we all have, which is the good food, right, to fuel us.
Mm.
And then walking everywhere. I really admire that as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now let's talk a little bit about the world of work. Who do you seek to serve, and what kind of work do you do?
So I'm an ADHD coach, which means that I help people with symptoms of ADHD. That's adults as well as families. And common issues on the adult front, particularly, is our clarity. So help with making decisions. Procrastination is also a big one, starting and completing tasks
Mm,
specifically. But I would say the number one thing is overwhelm. So with a hyperactive mind, whether you're an inattentive type or a hyperactive type, that hyperactive mind is always there, and that can be hugely, hugely overwhelming. So
mm,
although you need that stimulation and you seek out that stimulation, the flip side of that is it can be incredibly overwhelming. And that is definitely the number one reason that people come to me.
mm.
Um, and the analogy I always use is there's the brake and the pedal. So either people need the pedal to
Mhm.
stimulate them and get them going. And so I work with them to find out what actually works for them, what's stimulating for them, and how they can use that.
Yes.
And the same with on the brake side, what people need to calm them down to actually reduce that overwhelm. And we might look at what's worked in the past, um, and also trying to find new ways that, for example, a lot of my clients, they use Lego now. That's a big thing too. So finding something to stop that rumination. So it
Right.
can be craft or games or reading
Yeah.
or or speaking to someone, connection.
Yes.
But it's really, so just through conversations we explore different ways and experiment quite a lot as well.
Mm,
Because you might not always get it right the first time, or and equally what's worked in the past may not work now.
mm,
Um, so yeah, those are the kind of two key areas. And then with families, it's really helping where those executive functions aren't fully developed with kids, and especially kids with ADHD. There is usually a developmental delay with a
right.
lot of the executive functions, which are so useful for everyday life, like organization,
Mm,
emotional regulation, getting on, so social skills, getting on with other people. So I help the whole family unit as well as working with kids directly.
mm.
Um, yeah.
What would you say when you talked about the I now have this image of a bike, the brake pedal and the pedal itself, so the
Yeah.
brake and the pedal, or putting the brakes on the bike, or whatever mode of transport people utilize. But
Hmm.
what would you say you've witnessed when people learn how to use those sort of prompts? Do I need to brake? Do I need to pedal? How do people change the way they kind of meet situations or the way they face their overwhelm? What's different for them?
Yeah. Well, I think the first step is actually just awareness, because when you're going through something, you're so in it
Yeah.
and your mind is spiraling. Quite often that is the case with the rumination,
Mm,
that you can't distance yourself from it. So I
mm,
think the first coaching thing is to actually try and find ways of distancing yourself from it. And actually, the coaching process is part of that. That
yeah.
does help you pause and you're talking about it, and actually, you're looking at it from a different perspective because you're kind of
Mm,
getting out of your head with it, really.
yeah.
And then we talk about different ways and different perspectives.
Mm,
Um, and when people do that, that is really such an important step. And so it's funny because so many people come to me and they say, oh, I'm really self-aware, I'm really self-aware, but it's actually, it's hard to be self-aware when you're caught up
yes.
in difficulties. It really is, although you're like kind of aware of what's happening, but
Mm,
you're you're so internal, you can't externalize it at all. And then but when once people do, it becomes more of a habit, to
mm,
be able to do that. So then when you are in that moment, then you're more able to feel a bit less caught up in it.
yeah.
Um, but it is difficult. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do.
Yes.
Um,
But so people are taking, it's almost, again, I've got another mental model I think I learned visually. So this idea of kind of taking the issue out of the head and almost putting it on the table so you can kind of look at it and now then respond to it rather than it being all consuming. Um, and so is that the kind of thing that people then learn how to do, is to externalize it, as you put it?
yeah, yeah. It's, I mean, you've probably heard name it to tame it. And that
Mm,
really does work,
mm,
especially when you're talking about emotions. Um, and there's loads and loads of evidence that when people have that emotional granularity, so when they have a better vocabulary for identifying emotions and
yeah.
naming them, that is another way of distancing yourself from it.
Mm,
And then once you do distancing yourself, that's the first step to actually control, having some kind of control, and so it doesn't control you as much. Mm.
I get that. And so to our third and final question then, if you had to give people who are experiencing, and you talked about this, people who have the symptoms of ADHD. So my understanding is you're not working with people to get the diagnosis. It's either
No.
they see the symptoms or they're in the process of getting a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Um,
That's right.
so what would be your kind of top tips for managing some of the things that um yeah, people with ADHD are challenged by in your experience with working with, yeah, with children and with families?
Yeah. That is that's there are so many things, but I'll just pick out a few.
Yes.
Um, Funnily enough, diet really comes to mind. And actually, up until recently, I wouldn't have said that was a key connection because there hasn't been a load of evidence. I know there's lots of people saying you should eat this, you shouldn't eat that. There hasn't been a lot of evidence that diet has a big role to play.
Mhm.
But yesterday, and recently, actually, there's been evidence that a Mediterranean diet, there's this global review of studies, and a Mediterranean diet that may help manage ADHD. So, fruit, veg, whole grains, olive oils, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's because, like lots of things, ADHD, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. So,
Mm,
your internal environment and your external environment are so, so key. And people often find, and this can be a real difficult, can cause a lot of difficulty as well, that depending on those two things, the symptoms can vary so, so much.
mm,
And if you get those environments right, it can be really beneficial.
yeah.
So if I give an example for, say, for an external environment, some people, they really thrive in a buzzy, busy place.
Yeah.
And for other people, it's just a complete nightmare, totally distracting.
Mm,
Um, but everyone is so different. But for people with ADHD in particular, you can multiply this 100 times. So actually finding that right environment where you will thrive
mm,
is so key for adults, but especially for children as well. Like some
yes.
people just don't thrive in the classroom, but they'll thrive somewhere where they can run around um, and be more free.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I guess that is a big the big tip really is finding out what is working for you internally
yes.
um, and externally as well. The other big thing that springs to mind on the mental health side of things is, and I know you're really big into celebration as well, Shanaz,
Yes.
is this idea of a gratitude journal.
Mm,
Personally, I struggle with that word gratitude, and a lot of people do. I prefer to call it an appreciation journal or a book of little joys or just like a
yeah.
happy things, three good things, say something
Mm,
like that. Because I think the word gratitude can be a very big word
yeah.
carrying quite a lot of weight. You've got to feel grateful about this as a sense of
Mm,
obligation.
mm,
Um, but for people with ADHD, especially, they say that by the age of 10, kids have received 20,000 more negative messages than neurotypical kids just because of maybe some challenging behaviors.
yes.
And so that self-esteem, that negative self-view and negative view of life can be
Mm,
ingrained quite at a young age. So
yes.
it's really, really important to try and balance that with some kind of practice of remembering what you did well, remembering what's going well.
Yes. I
Um,
really hear that. I think that's momentous really. And it's the mini wins, it's the micro joys, it's the things that made you smile in the day, even if it's a cat jumping off a roof or whatever it might be. It could be, as long as that ends well, clearly, because
yeah.
but it could be, it's
Yeah.
those little micro things that just
Mm,
help the brain to focus onto, and then release the happy hormones, right? Rather than kind of always being in the space where we're getting told off for not paying attention or whatever it is that I know children end up hearing
Yeah.
those negative messages, especially during school time. Yes.
And
Mm,
if it's a habit, and if you're prompted to do it on a regular basis, it becomes a habit, and
yes.
then it does start rewiring those neural patterns. So you're not always automatically going to the negative, which is, in a boxing match, the negative is always going to win.
Mm.
It really is, unless you develop those muscles of positivity. But I think it has to be done in the right way, in the way that feels true
Yeah.
and real, and not kind of you know think positive. You've got to think positive. You've got to do it. It's just remembering those things
Yeah.
that are going well, and recording them, and getting into that frame of mind and habit. So I think if it's done carefully, it really can be life changing.
Amazing. Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Margaret. It's been absolutely amazing to walk for a little while in your world, and hear about the kind of work you do with yourself, but also with people who need your services. So, as we close down our chat for now, how do people get in touch with you if they would like to find out more about your work and how you might be able to help them?
Yeah, so they can look at my website,
Mhm.
which is flourishdhd.coach.
Lovely.
And they can email me on Margaret at flourishdhd.coach.
Wonderful. Love that. Thank you so much for your time. And for everybody watching, I really do hope you get in touch with Margaret if you would like to know more about what she does so that you can flourish with ADHD. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shanaz.